So I want to talk about the FCB grid. So the FCB grid can tell us how consumers evaluate product offerings and the type of appeals to use to help consumers make the right decision, i.e. the decision you'd like them to make. So according to the FCB grid, we can break market offerings into four groups really: high involvement, low involvement as one category, and thinking versus rational, or thinking versus emotional um, mindsets. So, for high involvement products where you have a rational or thinking mindset, um, this would be things like expensive commitment products, cars, home furnishings, homes, these kind of things. If you're a marketer, you want to use informative appeals. You want a lot of details. So, you're going to want to use heavy copy. So, a lot of print. You're going to want to use two-sided arguments. So you're going to present both the pros and the cons of the product because consumers tend to focus on that a lot. You're going to provide um, those things. On the other hand, if we have a high involvement category where it is a feeling or emotional type of offering, such as appearance products, jewelry, cosmetics, fashion goods, you want to make a psychological appeal. So you're going to use, again, heavy imagery. Sorry, I shouldn't say again. You're going to use heavy imagery, lots of images. You're going to use little copy. And then you're going to talk about vicarious emotional experiences. On the other hand, for our low involvement offerings, if it's thinking or rational, this would be habitual products like food, household cleaning items. You're going to use responsive appeals. So responsive appeals use one-sided arguments. You present your strongest argument and you provide some kind of conclusion to the customer for the customer. So you say something like, this toothpaste gives you fresh breath, right? So this would be a strong argument and you provide a conclusion, the fresh breath. And then you'd use reminders to keep the product top of mind. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to judgment and decision making. But for habitual products, it's really important to use reminders to spend money on advertising, or else consumers won't have your products top of mind. When it comes to low involvement feeling products, or I'm sorry, low involvement feeling offerings, you can think of impulse or self-satisfaction products like candy, cigarettes, liquor, so on and so forth. For those type of products, you're going to want to use social appeals. So glitter, lights, showy, and basically what you're trying to do is grab the attention of the consumer. For some reason, this recording jump sometimes to the next slide. So anyway, the FCB model also provides ways to market consumer offerings. So depending on the quadrant you fall under, or your product category or other offering, service, so on and so forth falls under, this is how you would market them. For thinking products that are high involvement, you're going to want to use personal selling, informative ads, and direct marketing, right? So that's what the DM stands for. For feeling, again, you're going to want to use direct marketing. You're going to want to use brand ads and public relations or PR. For low involvement products, you're going to want to use sales promotions and word of mouth. And sales promotions are a big deal. This is why you see so many coupons on things like body wash and soap and these kind of things. So, yeah. So, some implications of kind of what we talked about when it comes to involvement. You can segment consumers according to their intrinsic self-relevance for a brand or a product, which is exactly what I'm talking about when I refer to the car study. You can influence situational self-relevance. However, right, this personal relevance, however, you do need to question how useful this is. So if you are offering clearance sales and coupons and rebates, you should absolutely monitor how effective these programs are, because if coupons aren't really doing much for you, then maybe you shouldn't offer coupons. If rebates aren't doing much, maybe you shouldn't. But you should definitely monitor those things. And then back to the car study again, you can absolutely try and should try to influence enduring self or personal relevance, right? To do that, you can design products or services with attributes that are linked to more important values. And we see this to a certain extent, right? Um, you see some companies that are linking their product. I'm thinking of Chick-fil-A for a second here, that link their product to important values. They don't open on Sundays, they're pretty religious, so on and so forth. You could also think of, I'm trying to think who else. Oh, I think it's Marriott. So Marriott hotels are owned by a Mormon. So the owner and CEO, I don't know if he's still alive, but the family is Mormon. And one of the things that they do is that they put a Book of Mormon in their hotel rooms, and that might create some kind of enduring self relevance to other Mormons when they go travel. I don't want to just talk about religion, although I will say, one group that uses religion and most people don't even pay attention, Forever 21 actually puts a Bible verse on their bags when you shop there. I remember telling a friend that, and she was like, no, they don't. And I'm like, yeah, they do, because I wouldn't make a factual comment like that if it wasn't true. So anyway, let me move on from religion, other values. Oh, you could say something like universities. So there are some universities that have really tied themselves to diversity, right? So Wayne is trying to get there, but there are other universities that have been doing this for a while. And you, if you're, a person of color or even a non-person of color, maybe diversity is just very huge for you, and so you want to go to a place that's diverse. Um, you could also look at Wayne and their response to COVID-19. Today they came out with an email that says that if you plan on being on campus, you must have a flu shot. You can take that either way, but that might influence your values and self-relevance. Not influence your values, your relevance to Wayne State, right? Whether or not you think Wayne State is important to you as a person or alumni at some point. So motivation is not always great. Sometimes there are motivational conflicts. We'll talk about three. The first is what they call approach. In an approach conflict, you choose between two desirable alternatives. And the more equal the positives of each one of those alternatives is, the greater your conflict. Right? So let's say you're choosing between, your parents are going to buy you a car, or you're going to buy your own, and you're choosing between a Jeep, which you've always wanted, or I don't know what's another SUV type, a Lincoln, I guess, I don't know. Maybe you think both of these are equally positive, and you want one. Actually, you want both, but you can only choose one. If you're a marketer, what you do is you try to ease the conflict by either making one of the options more attractive, right? Or you create conditions where consumers can have both, right? So let's say, for example, someone is considering buying a new car versus going on an expensive vacation. Well, if that's the case, no money down financing should allow the consumer to do both, right? So the consumer only has to pay their normal, car note, so they don't have to put down a huge chunk of change, and it makes it desirable to do both, right? If you're thinking of a situation where you make one product more attractive, let's go back to the car commercial or car example. It could be that you still use no money down, and that influences people to buy the Jeep because it's no money down, versus the Lincoln, where honestly you need to put down, let's say, $5,000 for a down payment. There are a lot of cases where we try to do this. I'm thinking of something like Panera Bread, right? So you go to Panera, you want a sandwich, you want a salad, you want soup, something like this. What do? They have the you pick two, where they give you kind of half a sandwich and half some soup. And so that is another way that Panera has kind of tried to ease this conflict. The next motivational conflict is approach avoidance. It happens when you desire a goal, but you want to avoid that goal at the same time. In this case, people only purchase the product or market offering when they believe the benefits of the product or service or whatever outweigh the cost. If you're a marketer, you need to convince consumers that their product's value exceeds its cost. A great example of this is dieting, right? So a lot of people would like to lose weight. I think they say something like 67% of Americans are overweight or obese, yada yada yada. Um, and a lot of people want to lose weight, but they want to avoid it too because they don't want to do things like exercise or track their calories, so on and so forth. And so, if you're a marketer, how do you kind of get people past that? Oh, I should say one thing. This is happening quite a bit in the United States. If you look at statistics, a lot of people have moved back and kind of pulled back from dieting. So, a lot of people are thinking nowadays that I'll just eat healthy, yada, yada, yada. It'll work itself out. But the diet industry has been kind of reeling because fewer people are dieting. Um, so if you're Weight Watchers, what do you do? Well, what they did, and this is kind of smart, is that they started this campaign called Find Your Why, right? So if you really want to diet, but you don't want, to incur the cost, what they do is that they just kind of continue to push the value, right? And that value is attached to your quote unquote why. Try to say this on the other slide. The find your why, they're talking about the why of why you're deciding to lose weight. So, maybe it's your health or your kids, and then they push this idea that the value then, if it's your kids or your health or whatever, exceeds the cost. So the last motivational conflict that we'll talk about is avoidance. Avoidance, it's when you choose between two undesirable alternatives. What marketers typically do is they try to minimize the negative aspects of purchasing their product. And then also sometimes they emphasize the negatives related to avoiding the purchase of the product. So, an example, paying to fix up an old car or buying a new car, right? So, if it's buying a new car, they may say, listen, no money down. You can drive it off the lot for the first 3 months free, so you don't have to worry about car payments, so on and so forth. Or you can say, hey, you should go to the car service place because ultimately you already own this car. And so putting in an extra $200 will be way better than spending, $30,000 on a new car. I think they say something like the average car payment right now is $587 thereabouts. And that's not including insurance. And so if you're a car service place, you might say something like, hey, $200 right now, one time thing versus 587 a month for the next 60 months, right? Another example, paying insurance premiums versus leaving your family quote unquote unprotected. This is also sometimes an avoid conflict. What do you do? Well, if you're an insurance company, you emphasize this idea that you're leaving your family unprotected, right? You want to emphasize the negatives related to avoiding the product or purchasing the product itself. So I just talked about this idea of approach avoidance conflict where you want to achieve a goal, but you also want to avoid it at the same time. I think the marketplace has offered some solutions to that. Um, those type of conflicts. So a couple of ideas that come to mind. One, Bank of America, they have the Roundup program. So maybe you want to save money, but at the same time, you don't want to save money out of your checking account or out of your paychecks because you'd like to spend all the money you get. Bank of America has made savings a little bit easier. And the way it works in this program is that every purchase that you make, they round up to the nearest dollar and they put that amount, that change, in your savings account. So let's say you go to Starbucks and you spend $5.50 on a mocha, they will then round that purchase up to $6 and put the other 50 cents in a savings account for you. I have done this with Bank of America. It works quite well. I've recommended, I no longer use Bank of America, but I've recommended it to the people that I know who do, and a lot of people have been surprised by how much money they've been able to save just by doing this. Another example would be Weight Watchers, right? So it could be that you'd like to lose weight, but you also would like to avoid going to weekly meetings, so on and so forth. Weight Watchers has kind of helped you by putting Weight Watchers online, so people who don't want to go to monthly meetings can just do Weight Watchers by themselves. Um, it could be, on the other hand, that maybe you want to lose weight, but you don't want to join anything because you're a guy and guys don't typically join weight loss programs. Well, that's not necessarily true. And we know that, Weight Watchers partnered with DJ Khaled to kind of emphasize that point. Um, Again, motivation is dynamic. There's so many things that kind of go into determining our goals, our values, our personality, our self concept, so on and so forth. Um, we also tend to have multiple needs, right? So it's hard to satisfy needs because oftentimes we don't have a need, we have multiple needs. One of the things that you want to focus on is what they call the prepotent need, though. Um, the way to define that is just the most important need for a consumer. Motives are often difficult to infer from behavior, right? So you might see someone sitting down um, and studying, right? So you might see someone taking notes from lecture, and you might assume that their motive is that they like to get a good grade in the class. And it turns out maybe they're actually just taking notes to pass the time, and their notes have nothing to do with what the professor is talking about. Or maybe they're actually not taking notes. Maybe they're doing what I tend to do, which is terrible. Um, but when I'm in meetings, I tend to doodle and kind of make to-do lists. um, and then motivation is also dynamic because past experiences influence our motivation. Um, s- Past success, past failure, both of those things go into kind of how motivated we are to achieve our goals. Motivation is really hard. You always hear people say, how can I motivate myself? Or how can I motivate other people? Um, this is always a problematic question, right? One, we like to say that needs are never fully satisfied, and that motivation is dynamic because needs are never fully satisfied. So even if you think you're helping satisfy your needs or your own or an employee's needs or someone else's needs, you never fully satisfy those needs. Um, New needs often emerge as old needs are actually satisfied, right? So let's say you are an entrepreneur, and you want to hire 4 people, right? So, and each person has a specialized degree, um, and you say, hey, I want to offer you X amount of money because you believe that money is the way to get these people to work for you and be happy. And it could very well be the case. You hire all 4 of them from college. Each one of them really wants to make real money, and so they take the job because this is the most they've ever made. They're super happy. They're completely satisfied, according to them, because they got the money. Guarantee you, within 1 month, they will find reasons that they are no longer satisfied. Oh, I didn't know this job would be so hard. Oh, I didn't know the hours would be so long. Oh, I don't like Susie, my coworker. Oh, they offered me money, but my health care isn't enough. Stuff like this. Um, it's also true that a given need may lead to totally different goals, right? So let's say you and I are both at the mall, and I decide that I'm hungry, and you decide that you're hungry, right? So we both have needs, and our need is hunger. That might lead to different goals. So for you, it might be that it leads to going to the food court and eating Chick-fil-A. I don't eat Chick-fil-A, so that would not be a goal that um, that I would have. Um, Oftentimes, consumers are also more aware of their goals than their needs, and that becomes tricky, right? So maybe my goal is, to I don't know, to learn
how to speak a foreign language. But my need is actually really to learn to communicate effectively, regardless of what language I'm speaking, right? Or maybe my goal is to travel over the summer. But my need is really, to figure out a way to have a restful summer. So, not only are we often more aware of our goals and our needs, we often prioritize our goals more so than our needs.